Welcome to the Ann Arbor Human Rights Commission. Who is that?
It's okay. It was her phone.
Oh. Welcome to the Ann Arbor Human Rights Commission. Let's start by introducing ourselves. Let's start with you, Jordan.
Jordan Jones, intern.
Linda Winkler, Commissioner.
Corrine Moore, Commissioner.
Leslie Stambaugh, Commissioner and Chair.
Pam Dent, Commissioner.
Ali Remlawi, City Council.
Julie Grand, City Council.
Diana Cass, Commissioner.
Dilip Das, Commissioner.
Mohammed Al-Azam, Commissioner.
We've got two new people, and we'd like to give you a few minutes to introduce yourselves. Diana, you want to start?
Sure. My name is Diana Cass. I have several years, about 10 years, experience in diversity and inclusion, federal sector, equal employment, opportunity complaints, fact-finding investigations, and lots of experience as a mediator.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Dilip?
Hi, I'm Dilip Das, a lifelong almost resident of Ann Arbor, and with the exception of about 10, 12 years outside, but born here and now working for the last 16 years in the Provost Office at the University of Michigan, doing a variety of things, including accreditation, also involved in the diversity, equity, and inclusion process there, involved in the appeals court for student conflicts and sexual misconduct, and in conduct committees for students who have been admitted, in a variety of roles similar to that.
Thank you, Dilip. We welcome you both, and we're excited to have you. And entering, Vivian. Let's begin with open public comment. Libby, Hunter.
I read somebody sent me an article recently, and it just astounded me. The beginning of it, it starts with this sentence. The American Public Health Association, APHA, the nation's leading public health organization with over 25,000 members, has declared police violence to be a public health issue. Are you aware of this? Have you all, you know something about this recent document? Okay. So I was astounded, and I read this article announcing, this new policy statement. And there are a couple of interesting things in here, and I want to just make it clear that what I'm going to say here has nothing to do with human beings who are employed by police departments. This is only about policy and, our system of policing. But so a couple places in this article are interesting. The first one is, so part of this new statement by the APHA establishes that the solution to this health problem, policing, is best public health practices. It's not procedural policing reforms, if that makes sense. In other words, the APHA statement takes a firm stance against a group of well-meaning liberal reformers within public health who think that policing produces problems, but they still see the solution as more or better training, improving entry requirements, etc. They have a narrow understanding of the problem to think that it can be fixed with community policing or by requiring college degrees for police officers or other things like that. So the last part of this article that I thought was interesting, again, this is the article announcing that there is this new, it's confusing, there's this new policy statement. by the APHA. So this last part here says, part of the APHA statement establishes that the solution to this health problem is best public health practices, not, did I just read that part? Yes, sorry. Okay, this is the end. Organizers working on police violence hope that this new statement will serve as a resource for local health organizations, researchers, and epidemiologists, and hope it will be used to fundamentally support more grassroots organizing. These policies of using the police are made at the local level, explains an organizer, and he sees the APHA statement serving as another rhetorical tool for local communities to use in their attempts to replace police and jail spending with community-based mental health programs, drug treatments, community anti-violence programs, and other harm reduction programs. So this is from the article where I first learned about the policy statement, and it's from November 15th of 2018 from Filter Magazine. And then if we go to the actual policy statement itself, it's easy to find online if anybody's interested. It's endingpoliceviolence.com. Very impressive in how thorough it is, and I highly recommend people looking at it. Some of the paragraph headings, just to give you an idea of what this covers. Insufficient monitoring and surveillance of law enforcement violence. So that's one topic. Another one, policing as a mechanism of social control that exacerbates social inequity. Ineffective response to social problems. Barriers to accountability and reform. And then there's a major heading that says evidence-based strategies to address the problem. Improving surveillance and reporting of law enforcement violence. Decriminalization of activities shaped by the experience of marginalization. It's a tongue twister. Reallocation of funds from policing to the social determinants of health. And strategies to ensure community safety without reliance on armed law enforcement.
Your time is up, but would you mind sending us a copy of that? I think we'd all appreciate
Absolutely,
it.
and I just want to tell you and anybody else listening that this document can easily be found at endingpoliceviolence.com, and it's right there. So this is from the American Public Health Association. Very stunning new document. It just came out. They just issued this in the fall or summer of 18. And then the last thing is it has opposing arguments and evidence. So people who want to keep policing just the way it is, they've got concerns. And these are all addressed. And then the very end of it is action items.
Thank you very much. Please send us a copy too, and we'll look at it. Does anybody have any questions about what Libby's presentation was? Thank you for sharing that.
That I can just send around right now.
Excuse me?
I have a copy of it. I'm emailing everyone right now.
Oh, thank you. That does it. Thank you. Agenda. Does anybody have any comments about the agenda? If not, do we have a?
I'll move to adopt the agenda as is.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
February minutes. Does anybody need a copy of the February minutes? You've got one? Any changes, any discussion about this? Motion to accept the February minutes as is?
I move to approve it.
Thank you, Mohammed. Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. first thing on our agenda is just a lot of administrative odds and ends. Starting with the room, I think this is the last time we're going to be in this room this year. We'll be instead in the basement conference room, where we have asked to be moved. Second comment, Dwight Wilson has decided that he's had enough. He's been a commissioner since 2013. That's 6 years, and I can understand that. However, we will miss him. He's been very instrumental in a lot of things that we've done over the years. He was responsible for the community outreach, for the police review report that we wrote in 2015. He chaired a lot of community outreach sessions. He did a lot of interviews. His work was part of that report that we came out with in 2015. And we'll miss him. He was also on the task force. A lot of contributions. Thank you, Dwight, if you're listening. If you're crazy enough to listen. He wanted time. How can you? Doesn't make any sense. The city has advertised for an HR, for a management assistant who would be both part-time for the HRC and part-time for the Independent Community Police Oversight Commission. So it'd be support for both of our groups. And we've started, evidently they got like 100 or more applicants. We interviewed 4 of them. When I say we, I mean the assistant city administrator, somebody from HR, and myself. And unfortunately, no one was, we don't have a commission yet, so no one was on the commission, but I tried to think of them, and I think all of us tried to think of them and us as potential clients for this person. We've got some good people. I'm hoping that we get the one that we've cut it down to 2 people, and they're now going through a writing exercise because writing will obviously be writing and sort of some research. And we're excited. I hope we get somebody good. I think that would put the new policing commission off to a good start. Other things are, we've got conflict of interest forms that everybody has to fill out. We fill it out every year, and it's time. And then I will come up with a summary of everything and send it to people so that they also have a copy. Most of our conflict of interest tends to be not money and not power, but just interest with private work. But it has to be done, and it's in our bylaws. We also have an annual report that has to get out this next month, by the next month or so. And those of you who've been here before know what it's about, and it really means that I write it. Linda did some of the work already for it, I think, and and everybody gives input into it a couple times before it's done. We also have an annual report for contractor compliance, and that will also be done very soon. Strategic planning, we've been talking about a meeting for strategic planning for some time, and I think it looks like June at this point. But soon, we're getting to a point where it might be nice to have, now it might be nice to have the new management assistant be part of that. The implications, by the way, for this management assistant is, first of all, it's somebody who is not just, it's not just clerical work. We're looking for somebody who has done this kind of work before, and we got applicants. It looks like we have applicants who have done some casework, and that gives us a potential of having a lot more resources. And one of the things we ought to think about in the strategic planning meeting is how we can use these well. We really could, we might be able to do an awful lot more, hopefully good, with this person. Okay, I think the next thing on our agenda is in the Independent Police Oversight Commission. And I've asked Julie and,
Oh, can I just make one administrative
Sure.
announcement? Sorry. Just an FYI that Mayor Taylor today asked Ali and I to join him in supporting a resolution to support City of Ann Arbor flying the transgender flag on International Transgender Day of Visibility, March 31st, so that will be coming to council on Monday.
oh, do you want us to think about it or do something about it?
Anyone
just-
have any objections to flying the flag on? Yeah,
I don't think
I
anyone's
think he just thought as representatives to the HRC, he thought we'd want to join in on that, and we both enthusiastically agreed to do so.
Yes,
So-
that'll be in
March 18th, Monday agenda. Didn't think that would be a point of contention with this group.
I certainly hope not.
one that you probably want to be aware of.
Yes,
So the flag will be a little different on the 31st.
the flag will be different.
But
Oh,
we'll be flying.
two flags,
Yeah,
yeah. So March 31st is the date of the
correct.
Transgender Day?
Of visibility, yes.
Excuse me?
It's the Transgender Day of Visibility on March 31st, so assuming this passes on Monday, and I have no reason to believe it won't, that we will be observing that as a city on Monday, or on the 31st.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Would you speak a little bit about your selection process and where we are now and how you made the decisions and what are our final steps?
Sure. Okay. Sorry, I was just pulling up my note. Do you want to start?
Well, I can start, yeah. I mean, I'm sure Julie's got some really good notes that she gave council on the March 4th meeting, where we presented the names of the youth plus the 10 other members. We were working with the same list that this commission worked with and saw all the same names. I don't believe there was any other names that came from any other source. And there was a lot of overlap. And I'm not sure if this commission has gone back and looked at, you know, how they matched up with their recommendations. But I think, you know, there was sentiment that the 2.0 would be what this commission wanted to see as the cutoff. And I do believe
Every single
there
one?
was nobody over
That's right.
that 2.0, you know, score. And so we look for experience and balance. We wish there was other minority groups that could be represented on this commission. There was, to my knowledge, as far as I could tell, there weren't any Asian folks that applied. So there's nobody from that big part of the world. I think 40% of the world's population or so.
Yeah, 14% of the Ann Arbor's population.
Yeah, 14% of this, yeah, you're right, it is the single largest minority group in Ann Arbor. But there weren't any applications, so we couldn't, hopefully next year, you know, we get some more people who do apply. So it was a really, obviously, tough process, as you guys and women know. There were a lot of qualified people, some folks with the same, you know, attributes, or, you know, so you wanted to, you know, debate amongst ourselves as to why, you know, a certain combination worked better. And, you know, again, Julie can explain more, but the ordinance itself, you know, pretty much laid out the qualifications or requirements, and working with the framework of the ordinance, it was pretty easy to come to the conclusions that we came to. The hard part was going from, you know, 20 or 18 people down to 10. There was a good 5 or 6 people I guess you'd call them on the bubble, NCAA term, you know, you're not part of the 64 that go in a tournament, if I can throw in a sports analogy in, but there is a good, 4 to 6 candidates that we wish we had more room, or at least will come back and apply again in the future, next year. Because it's really hard to say no to some really good folks, and it's,
There were a lot of good folks.
so Julie and really helped spearhead the letter that we put out to everybody that applied, sending them our thanks. And, like some members here said, there were gonna be some disappointed people. I think Pam said that, and so well at one of the meetings, that, there's a lot of good people there, and there's people that each individual person wanted to see, and at the end, somebody's gonna be disappointed, and hopefully that didn't really happen as much as feared, but, there hasn't been, any problems as far as I can tell. I mean, I think there's some members in the community who would want more transparency. I think the only kind of transparency they would perhaps be satisfied with would be actually being in the room and having the same kind of discussions that we had. There were some debates on whether city employees qualified, so we had to introduce an amendment before we even selected the 11 people. This was talks that we had to procedurally had everything in line in time with calendar, and so allowing temporary seasonal employees to be considered at least. But ultimately, in the end, I don't think there was anybody who even triggered that amendment to the ordinance. So all in all, I think it's off to a good start. We'll be voting on the 18th on the names. So if the community would like to reach out to any of us on council, or in any form or fashion, and let us know their objections or their support for what was done, that would be great. But we'll be taking a vote on that on Monday. And from here, I'll let Julie kind of finish up where maybe I missed some points.
Thanks. I think, one of the things that, as Ellie mentioned, that we did go by the ordinance, but I think this group also really went by the ordinance in developing your survey, in developing the application. And so much of, we were asked for, well, do you have a rubric? Well, we didn't need one, because the thought and the responses that went into the questions that this group developed really did guide our selection process. So I just want to express my thanks to all of you that worked so hard on putting that together and thinking through those questions, because the depth of responses that we received from those questions and the insight that it provided into things like, is this person willing to engage with uncomfortable topics? Or, even thinking about, do they recognize what the challenges are going to be for this commission, or what they think the purpose of the commission is and is going to be? And that was really instrumental in at least, I can speak for myself, in guiding my thoughts through this. I think we do have a really diverse group that we're putting forward in terms of background, in terms of what was asked in the ordinance, in terms of, gender balance. It's 6 women, it's 5 men. We have 6 African Americans, we have 2 Arab Americans, we have people who represent all sorts of social service agencies that I hope will resonate with this group, and we're really on. When we think about the groups that Jordan was reaching out to, for example, we see a lot of those names on this group, either through having been employees of these organizations or having served on the board, been connected in some other way. So that's incredibly meaningful to me. We did, 6 of the 11 were 6 of your top 10. So I felt good about that it aligned that way. And we did talk about how, in the end, it's easier to rank than it is to put together a group. And sometimes we make decisions just trying to achieve that balance. We did try to get as many in-city residents as we could, but also didn't want to exclude non-Ann Arbor residents, so that's a 7 to 4 city residents versus non-Ann Arbor residents. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm really grateful to this group. I'm incredibly excited about who we're bringing forward for Monday. I was disappointed to have some distrust from our council colleagues about the process. I wish they'd just talk to us about it. And there have definitely been, a few conspiracy theories floating around, especially once those emails went out. But we felt that it was, on balance, important to thank those who applied prior to having those names be released. And that was the direction that I took from this group, and I appreciate that. And because I was the one who actually sent the emails from the 4 of us, I did receive some of the responses, and other than a couple, they were mostly just people who responded, said thanks for considering me, and gave their well wishes to the group going forward. So we other than this initial kind of first response of distrust, I feel that the community has been pretty excited. I was at Student Advisory Council earlier today, and they were pleased to learn that our youth member, who's currently in high school, will be a U of M student next year. So there's they had wanted to put a student on this group or recommend a student, couldn't find someone. So there's some nice, youth U of M synergy there. Yeah. So they were and plan on inviting her to one of their meetings soon, so that they can discuss their concerns about this group.
Great. Any questions about?
Yeah, I have a question. So the emails that were sent out, were they sent out to everyone or just the people who weren't selected, or?
Before we sent out those emails, we personally contacted, so the 4 of us just divided up in phone calls and called everyone, or sometimes had to message in other ways if we couldn't get them over the phone. But we reached out to all 11 members first that we were planning on nominating, just to confirm that they were still interested in participating. So we just did a check that way, and then all of those who weren't in that list, then we sent out those emails.
And those
after.
were rejection emails, or just?
It was more of a thank you. It was just letting them know that
We
that
wanted to
we
let
could.
them know first
Yeah.
before, not to be the last to know. We wanted to extend them the courtesy of knowing before names were published in any other outlet. And making those calls, I want to interrupt, because making those calls to those folks that we did select was some of the best kind of phone call you can make. It was really, really empowering and a really satisfying message, and delivering that news. So, and everybody who took the call was honored.
And enthusiastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, really just a lot of energy
Thank
in
goodness.
those responses.
Yeah.
But just to be clear, these candidates are still subject to like a full council vote, right? It's not
Correct.
just
Yes.
these people are
Right.
automatically on it just because the 4 of you put them out.
And that'll take place
They will
on the
take
18th.
7 votes for
Yeah.
these folks to be approved, seven votes.
So we understood we weren't trying to say that it was final. We just were trying to say thank you, and we'd rather have you hear our appreciation than read about it in MLive.
I have a question. I'd hate to see the people who applied and were not chosen this round to go away forever because there's so many good candidates. Did you do anything to encourage? Well, I think typically the applications for a standard position on a commission are held for a couple of years. I don't know if that's the case with this commission, but it would be nice if these applications were held on to and people were contacted when there's an opening.
Sure, and I think that, it was, part of that message that went out was one to say, there are going to be plenty of opportunities
Right.
through subcommittees, public engagement, forums, what have you, please do stay involved.
No, but even,
Yes, and other opportunities, sure.
people will leave and there will be vacancies.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah.
what happens, so,
Right.
yeah,
Absolutely.
okay.
Yeah, we tried to keep it very positive and
Okay.
appreciative. And we might, even for, now we have an opening on this group, for example, so
Right.
that could be a source of people we
Right.
might want to reach out to say, well, you were interested in this type of work, maybe you'd like to serve on this commission.
Yeah.
So, because every single person, as we all know, checked that box saying
They
that they
did.
wanted to stay involved.
Yeah.
So,
It's
we'll try to hold them
exciting
to it.
to have that kind of excitement from the,
Yeah, those weren't like just
Yeah.
2-minute phone calls, for me at least. They were good 10-minute conversations that I
Yeah.
had with folks. They were really, like I said, honored to be entrusted with that position, and so.
Right.
good
So
stuff, huh?
the commission will have opportunity to participate in selecting the new police chairman.
I hope so.
Police chief?
That was
Yeah.
the
That's in the
hope, that
ordinance.
was the intent, in order to get the commission set in time, so that they do get to weigh in, just like any other party in the process of hiring the next police chief is gonna be involved with. And so, I've made it a point several times with the recruiter and with our city administrator that was, has to happen, so, and we're still on schedule, for it to happen.
Any other, Pat?
Yeah, just Pam.
Pam.
A couple of things. One speaks to a phone call that was received by the, or a voicemail that was left on the HRC voicemail relative to when the actual listing would come out, and would it come out prior to it appearing in the news? So I don't know when the conversations took place, either to notify individuals they were being recommended or notifying those who were not selected. So could you speak to when that occurred? I left the voicemail message in the voicemail and want to be able to respond. It's probably moot at this point, but just so that it's clear when that actually occurred.
We sent the email out a couple days prior, I believe. I can check in my email, sent mail to see when, because I sent out 50-something. But we had to, the final thing we had to do, which was that final Friday, was determine who we wanted for 1, 2, and 3-year terms, and then to get the resolution to the clerk's office, which we
Yeah.
sent all the
We had a
emails out
deadline.
a couple days prior to the Friday before our last meeting, which was on the 4th, so the email, I can check, but they were sent out a couple
26,
days
28.
before, yeah.
Okay.
Something between the 26, 28. Because we had to get to the city clerk the list of names for the first reading by 5 o'clock on that Friday preceding council on the 4th.
Okay.
So it was soon in that same time. And I think there was there was a couple days where we made the calls to the applicants we selected, made sure all those folks were still interested in the position before we sent out the email letting the other people know that that they weren't selected, but they deeply appreciated and to have interest going forward.
I sent them on the 26th.
Okay. The call came in on the 28th, so that's why I wanted to have that clarification. The other question speaks to the timeframes that these individuals will serve, and those applicants who were not selected wanting to express interest, more so for those who may serve 1-year terms. If I recall correctly, the ordinance speaks to being appointed and can be reappointed for either of the terms, 1, 2, or 3-year terms. So how will I may be getting ahead of myself, but I know that those who were not selected, at least one has expressed interest in wanting to be appointed to the commission. So what's the likelihood of anyone not selected, I guess, or appointed, being able to be considered for any of those terms? I know that it's a number of variables. There may be people who may elect on their own not to continue and serve for successive terms. There may be individuals who, for whatever reason, are prevented from continuing. And there just may be individuals who indicate that, okay, I've done, you know, what I wanted to accomplish, and so I'm willing to let someone else serve. So I know that those, at least one applicant has expressed interest in wanting to know how soon that might occur. I know it could be potentially 1 year, assuming that all those who are appointed for 1 year say, okay, I don't want to continue, or at least one person doesn't.
Sure, so there were three, so our youth member is written into the ordinance as a one-year term, so that, you know, could be, that person could be reappointed, they could, you know, and then there were three others, so we just tried to split it up as evenly as we could, given that it wasn't an even number that was divisible by three. And so, you know, we just tried to, you know, we thought about just honestly like mix of skills and experience as we were doing that. And were there, you know, certain individuals that we thought we really wanted to see for the, you know, a 3-year term because we thought they would bring a certain level of stability to that group. So, you know, within, it will be, you know, I think about 13 months because reappointments are done in June, May, June, whatever it was, it goes a year. We weren't going to appoint someone for 1 month. So it goes, you know, a little over a year, and then we will either, you know, reappoint, or it does leave, you know, at least 3 potential spots open within a year's time. And then the following year, there'll be another 4, I think, that would be eligible for a 3-year reappointment or new spots, and then within another year again, some more.
Okay.
So,
You know, if somebody moves or gets a job or changes.
Yeah, I'm
Which
sure
happens-
just like
which
a
happens all the
natural-
time.
Yeah, without even
Yeah.
waiting till the full term.
So it's hard, my guess is it's somewhat fluid.
And I thought the ordinance, isn't there kind of like a reserved spot for the youth representative?
there's,
So that there is a designated spot that it will always be filled by a youth.
yes.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, somewhat loosely defined, so, you know, our youth member could maybe serve for 3 or 4 years, and then maybe you're not as youthful as you once were. And then you,
I'm hoping maybe the current
you
youth
come
may
on.
can stick around a little
Right.
bit, because they came highly recommended.
yes. Our youth member is or who I hope to be, is, had quite the campaign of support on her behalf.
That's exciting. Any other questions for Julie or Ollie about this? Good, well, thank you so much for what you've done, because
Thank
I
you.
know, we know how hard it was to go through, but also how exciting it is.
Well, thank you for doing a lot of the work. This commission did a lot of work, like Julie said, gave us something that was easy to work with and you know, come to the conclusion and the finality. So it was not, I mean, I got in late. It was, I think I had it the easiest of some folks in this whole process. So, and so I was just glad I had a hand in it, and I wish it success. And it's going to need a lot of support, especially that first year. And so, yeah, we thought about, you know, the kind of personalities we want there to help start it, help get it, you know, second year, last year, and hopefully we you know, put the right ingredients in to this pie, and you know, and it works well.
One other question. I know that on the 18th, there's going to be a vote, but has anybody thought about what's going to happen after it? like an orientation, for example. Like, I know they're gonna start doing some training, and I'm wondering who's preparing that, you know, and who's thinking about what they need.
Well, I think, you know, the city administrator ought to be thinking about it. I'm sure he is. And we do have an FTE. I don't think that person's been hired yet to
No,
help.
not yet.
But there has been some talk as to what the next steps are. You know, we'll definitely talk more, obviously, at council meeting coming up this weekend as to what the next steps are. I'll bring it up, obviously, and I think it's important for this commission to also.
Would you like some ideas?
Absolutely.
And part of it's going to be driven by, you know, the commissioners themselves.
Sure.
So, this is why we picked a lot of people with leadership experience and who have a lot of experience, you know, working well with others in a constructive way and handling difficult
Yeah.
issues.
But
Really
they
glad
might not
that-
know what they don't
really
know.
glad
And-
that this group has their unofficial liaison on
Commission, do you want to,
Hey,
I don't know if you'd like to
Great.
weigh in on that.
I thought it was great that we would have a liaison. That's why I applied, because I wanted to make sure one of us was there to help usher in the new group and also sort of co-facilitate when there are issues that we both want to see addressed. I think it would be great to have someone on both commissions, for at least for a little bit, right? While it gets
and
its
we do.
legs. So I'm excited, looking forward to it.
do you want to suggest some things that we might do? You think orientation, or would you like to sit and think about it and have
You know, I like
seriously.
everyone else, I don't think anyone thought about it. I do know that we talked about making sure that the members of ICPOC did have certain trainings, like going on the, what do you call them, ride-alongs
Yeah.
with the police. I think that's really
Yeah.
important. So I think that would be helpful. I definitely think we can talk to Lazarus, because I don't know anyone else who, you know, would be able to just sort of facilitate getting that together once everyone gets voted in. And, you know, maybe I can talk informally with other, you know, prospective members, and maybe we have some suggestions, you know, other than the ride-alongs, as far as what would make a good orientation, so that we can sort of get on our feet.
The task
But
force might
absolutely.
also.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We can talk to the task force, because they know, they went through this, where they were sort of thrown into a room. What would have helped, you know, and what do you wish you had before you started the conversation?
Well, I think they need to get to work quick. I think we got
Right.
6 months to get the bylaws figured out. And, you know,
Right,
so there's a lot of work ahead. And
yeah,
fortunately, we had people to pick from that have experience in
Right.
organizations and leadership, and you know, come with the talent and the experience to put it into play. It's a lot to ask from an all-volunteer, you know, commission. And, but, you know, if any indication of the calls that we made out to the people, it sounds like they're really eager and they just need a little direction. And, you know, we will definitely need to be discussing as to what the next steps are. But I think the ordinance will help guide that.
absolutely.
Thank you, we'll be talking about it then. And a lot of exciting things going on, it's very neat. Thank you. And let's move on to trespass. I don't have the materials that I was hoping for, but I want you to know that they are almost finalizing a form for reading trespass. And not only does it have, I'm told, all the things we asked for, but it's really user-friendly, or it appears that way. I have not held it in my hand, but I had them read it to me, and it sounded good. It's in triplicate. It's, what I like about it most is something that Ariane and, sorry, I forgot her name, there was a person who was working in the city attorney's office who helped with this. And on the back, it has a whole list of resources that people who have been trespassing might be able to use. And so it's a very user-friendly kind of thing.
So when you say that it has everything that we asked for, like, what is the time period that it sets still as the default? Is it still 1 year?
You know what, that I don't know.
You looked at it, but it didn't
I
say
didn't
that?
look at, I didn't
Okay.
actually see it. I mean, I saw that they had it, but I didn't see it. They didn't.
So you haven't seen an actual?
That part I haven't seen, and you know what, I will call tomorrow, because I don't know. And we agreed, I think we weren't happy about it, but if I remember correctly, the decision was that it was 1 year as a default, but that in library and,
No, there was no conclusion. I don't think we agreed to anything.
Still under discussion.
They wanted more time to take more data, but they also said that their data gathering is bad. So I don't understand how more time will get them better data if they're not gathering better data now.
no, they're not. No,
So
I think that was, I mean, I think that it was, they were pretty firm that they felt that was the default, was what the communities around the city, except for the library and the,
I think that they were willing to consider
6
changing
months?
it. We just didn't resolve it.
Okay, I will
Yeah,
call.
we didn't resolve it.
You
Yeah,
don't
there was no difference between private property and public.
Okay, they didn't ask me, but I thought that was the,
Right, the library chooses not to use 1 year because it's too severe
Yes.
by default.
Yeah.
And they acknowledge that, even they understand it to
Good.
be the
Oh,
default,
good.
but they absolutely understand it to be too severe, which is something I think the entire community should come to understand.
Yeah.
Because they, like everyone else, they just thought, oh, well, the law makes it 1 year. We're not going to do that, but it's our understanding that that's supposed to be what happens. So they do it more because they realize they don't have to do the 1 year requirement, but they seem to think the 1 year thing is a standard that is supposed to be the law, which, you know, I think we all agree is not, you know, it's just something, it's more of an accident that it's that way.
I think I think my understanding was that they were worried about having it 3 months in one instance, 6 months in another instance, a year in another instance. I mean, I would hope that we could push for 6 months at the minimum across the board. I'd like
Right.
to see it even less, but we didn't resolve it.
okay. I will call them. I think they thought it was resolved, but I'm not sure. Maybe I don't know what they put.
I think they thought it was resolved at 1 year.
I think they thought so. I remember that they argued that all our communities around Ann Arbor used 1 year as
And
a
I think-
default, and they didn't want differences there, although I don't know
Yeah,
why
but
that
I
makes a
think Dwight
difference.
rather eloquently argued in favor of us being leaders in this community.
Yeah, no, a lot of people did. Let's see what they say.
But, you know, I did push back at that same meeting saying property owners have rights as well.
Right.
And
That's right, I
we do
remember
have
that.
concerns when it comes to public spaces, but we also do need to respect the rights of property owners. And that still will be true. And 6 months isn't gonna work for most property owners.
Why not?
Because if you go to that extreme already, you go to that level, there's, I think, it'd be myself, I can speak for myself.
Yeah.
If I had to go to that level, I'd want more than a 6-month assurance that I'm not gonna have any more problems, because usually I can take care of it, you know, before that. But if it gets to that level, where somebody is given a trespass ticket, you know, as a property owner, as a private, you know, property owner, I would want a little bit more time before I have any more issues.
Right. I think the main issue is that nothing would stop the property owner from doing the 1 year. That is valid under the court, right?
Yeah.
You know, that's what the court decided, that 1 year was okay. And so property owners would still have the ability to trespass people for 1 year. What we were asking is that the form not default to 1 year. And so there are so many ways around that. Like, you could circle, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anything up to 1 year, right? So I think that
But then the
property
law
owners.
enforcement wanted the consistency, as people already have spoken to, where they can't have, it's gonna be really hard to
Great. Another thing that law enforcement gets called on all the time, personal protection orders, absolutely, completely variable as far as when they actually expire and when they get issued and how long the terms are. So
And that's
it
a
would.
court, it's a different process, though.
Right, but similarly, the court can write in any, like, the police are the ones who have to enforce these random orders with random, periods in them. And so I think,
And we said that the Blake Transit Center and the library also have their own mechanisms internally to police this and monitor it and enforce it. And, I just think in those cases, perhaps, and that's where most of this occurs anyhow. But if we're gonna be changing an ordinance that affects everybody, then we have to.
But we're not
really
changing the
look at-
No, it's not
ordinance, we're just changing the form.
informational
Okay.
form.
Yeah,
This is, nobody's, being charged with anything. This
The
is-
ordinance doesn't state a time period to begin with.
Right. So, yeah. And I actually, I don't know that we've resolved what Blake Transit Center does. I think that's actually something we should look more into. I just know that I am on the library board, so I've asked a lot of questions, and I've reviewed their policy, and I understand it. But they also understand that they have every right to ask someone to leave for a year, and in severe situations, they will do that, So I think that's something that also property owners should be educated on when they're issuing these, if this is a, situation that cannot happen again or was so disruptive and you feel the need to take advantage of, your ability to trespass someone for a year, that you should be able to do that. And so, it's more, we don't want people to automatically be trespassed for a year over a minor incident, where even the property owner doesn't even realize that they could do less time, right? Oftentimes, they don't even realize that less time is an option. And so that's kind of what we're hoping
Yeah.
to address, which was left unresolved. And so we'll
that's
see
right.
what they come up with.
Let's see what they did. Let's see what they did. But other things that are happening, and they are, I think, all from Ariane Slay, the assistant senior attorney, include all kinds of things like, remember, we've got a new ordinance now, so this is all local ordinance rather than Michigan State. And that gives us a lot of power to do things like maybe negotiate with people who've been trespassed, that if they do, who knows what, if they follow some kind of like dry out, or do apply, I don't know what, but there's a possibility that this could be mitigated altogether. They're trying to get people off of trespass, repeated trespasses, and trying to make life easier for them as well. And so there's a good, and they're also talking about possibly visiting on a regular basis places like Avalon and talking to them about trespass and how you can avoid it, and so I mean, it could be.
So they're engaging in more of an education component? or
Yes, I
thinking
think
about it?
so.
I think that Julie brought up the good point the last time they were here, that the other a component about it is educating business owners about trespass more.
Yes.
And are they interested in doing that as well? Because it seemed like they were completely unaware that there were business organizations or that there was any interest on behalf of business owners to learn more about this.
They would let me know that they'd be interested in having us prepare some kind of material or something that could be handed out to people. But they are thinking about education, they just don't, I don't know that they have.
Yeah,
the
but I
people
think
to
that
do
the focus of education needs to be on both sides, right?
Right, on
Not just
business
the
owners as
potential
well as
trespassers, but the
people.
ones who are calling the police and asking to trespass, right?
Right, you're right. Okay. Hopefully we'll have the forms next time or sometime in the next few days. I thought they were going to be out by now.
And I do know that Margaret, we asked her this at the last meeting, but we still haven't gotten the police policy on trespass yet.
Thank
From,
you.
I think, almost a year and a half ago. And so we've been checking up on that. Has anyone mentioned anything about when we'll see that?
I
I
will,
think they're, they might have to reassign it to someone else, right? Or no?
I don't know, Margaret is still doing work.
Oh,
but just
Yeah.
from-
Okay.
No, and it wasn't even Margaret's
Right.
thing, it's just
No,
that at the
she-
last meeting, she said she texted Ariane to see what the status was, because Ariane said that she would check in on that, and there was no reason why we couldn't see it, but we still have never seen it.
I have had different explanations about the policy that include that there is nothing written.
But-
I mean, they talk about a policy, but when I ask,
Former police chief Baird gave us a number. There is an actual policy. When he spoke, like, I took notes when he spoke here, and there was a policy number that I referenced more than once to both Fairness and Ariane
can you
Slay.
get it, can you reference that? I'd love to be able to ask by number, if that's possible. Because I really have been told that there is nothing written.
I wonder if some of the confusion is the difference between the reading trespass and the charge of trespass.
Oh, that's it.
Because there probably is something related to the charge, so the question is there a policy?
I don't know,
related to
now
reading
that the
trespass?
charge of trespass is being, the policies are being written now.
Right, but the
Yeah.
older policies.
I don't
So-
know that there was an
yeah.
older policy, because it was a state law.
Right.
But,
Well, but the local police had some kind of instruction on how to enforce the state law, because that's what they did here, I would assume, but.
I think
don't
this
know.
is from the email from May 1st, or it was from 2018 somewhere, where we asked the questions about trespass. You asked, is there any internal AAPD policy governing when it is appropriate to read trespass? If so, what is that policy? Answer, AAPD policy 041-026 trespassing.
041-026?
Yes, outlines the procedures for staff handling trespassers. Can we see that TBD? That was TBD on May 9th, 2018. It was TBD on January 9th, 2019. It's TBD last month at the meeting. It's been TBD for almost a year now.
I will make a formal request for that. Thank you, that's very helpful. Complaint procedures. Are we ready? to-
Sure.
Any more?
Yeah, I mean, you all have, again, it's pretty much the same draft that you saw last time of the procedures that we're hoping to follow from now on when we get discrimination complaints. It's a work in progress, but I hope we'll all, kind of refer to it when we're handling these, and we'll make changes as needed. And for the new people, take a look. You guys are both really experienced in these things, so I don't know if you know, but the Human Rights Commission really only started receiving complaints, only was given the power to receive complaints in the fall of 2014, and then it took a while for us to get up and running and create a complaint form and get the word out there that the complaints should now come to us, because for the 10 years prior to that, there was no place for people to file discrimination complaints in the city of Ann Arbor. There had been a Department of Human Rights before that, but that was done away with more than 10 years ago, more like, 15 years ago at this point. So this is still relatively new. We have had, how many complaints every year? Maybe 8 to 9.
Something like that.
And we're feeling our way, but now we finally have some procedures based on our experiences that we hope will help us, so.
Do either of the new commissioners want to be a part of
Good
sort
question.
of the subcommittee that helps investigate complaints? Because.
No subcommittee. just
Well,
a
sorry.
group,
Yeah,
Technically.
group who takes responsibility for responding to and investigating complaints, because we do need help on that. And you guys sound really experienced in this area. So it does involve mediation, it involves investigation. Our role really is more to help resolve and mediate, between the parties. And so There's definite skill set needed there. So please do let us know. We welcome any support that we can get, right?
Yeah. We're also interested in people who want to work on Trespass and maybe design some educational materials. So think about that too. Anything you want specifically from the complaint procedures? Would you like us to track changes if we have ideas?
Sure, whatever. Yeah, it's, as I said, a work in progress, so we can, if you see anything that you need, that you'd like to see changed, you can just make some edits and maybe send it to everybody. We can all review it and, yeah.
Just make sure there aren't any OMA violations in
Oh,
sending to all.
if it's a draft,
What we usually recommend under, I don't know if it counts for this group, but what we usually recommend under OMA is if anyone has changes that they just reply and send them to you.
okay.
And then you
Yes.
send that revised draft out to others so that you're not dealing with the reply all. And that way, it will also, it just avoids
Okay.
any chance of that kind of
Okay,
violation.
so any changes, send to me. Is that,
Thanks. Yeah, sorry.
okay.
Thank you.
I know it's really nitpicky, it's just,
No, it's fine.
we
It's
wanna
fine.
keep things.
So we don't have staff to do this for us, so it gets a little tricky.
Oh, boy. Some information about the City Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Initiative, which is a new thing. I think it says it's been going on for 2 quarters. They have 2 quarterly reports, so it must be. Sherry Sell, who used to be our HR liaison, is the director of this new group. And Linda and I went and interviewed her, and Linda, you want to say a few words about what,
I wouldn't say we interviewed her.
or, well,
Yeah.
we talked, she
Well,
told us about it, she
I-
gave us an introduction.
I mean, you can, why don't you summarize?
Okay.
You took notes, I didn't.
It's an interesting process. It is something that is tangentially probably related to us. It has to do with things as broad as sustainability and, but also the HR kinds of stuff and making sure everybody's included. It's a different way of thinking. It has to do with institutional equality. And they're doing some interesting things. And I don't think I have a copy of it. Oh, yes, I do. Okay. I sent you the December 28th annual report, so you can get an idea. A lot of what they do is they go to places and lectures and things, and they also come up with, I don't know, interesting kinds of, let's see. They have more money than we do. Interesting things like battery storage technologies for affordable housing. So there are a lot of different kinds of components. Office of Sustainability and Innovations will be hosting 2 sustainability forums. Sustainability listening tour. Some of what they're doing is things like finding out, asking, for example, when they come up with meetings for the public, where those meetings should be held so that they're more exclusive, and what times should they be held, and where do they get, how do they get to different kinds of populations? How can they make things like changing lighting, light bulbs, burn out, for street lights, sidewalk maintenance, things like that. How can they make it equal for all the different neighborhoods? By perhaps making it less on complaint basis and more on scheduled maintenance kinds of things. they're doing, it's a very interesting concept having to do with the institutional ways in which we become unequal.
Unequal.
And have the city services be given unequally. This is a way to deal with that kind of a problem, and it's a very interesting one. And we did both say that contact us if you need anything. We'd be glad to help. And this is just a heads up that you should know that they exist, and that we probably will be doing something with them. And I hope you don't have any questions, because I don't know very much more.
No, I think they're just, part of this is just trying to cut across all departments, so they're all being encouraged on both, on the DEI front as well as in sustainability. So that's where you're seeing some overlap, but really to challenge all of our departments to think about ways and not just ones that might seem more obvious. So that's where it may feel random in this report, but I think it's trying to get to the breadth and the potential of what's happening.
And also, we had, if you remember, we had Anna Lemner here talking about one community, and this is a piece of that. One community was for the Washtenaw County, and it was more, I think, more tied into racial disparities. Here we're talking about disparities of race and class and neighborhood and all kinds of things.
Yeah, so there were conversations about one community and then thinking more broadly, but also let's not ignore one community because we don't want to push race down. So that's sort of the, my understanding of some of the context of this coming forward, but a former council, supported this effort, and so now we're just starting to see some of the implementation of it. But early is I think that's a fair characterization. Early and difficult to characterize.
Okay. Well, what it should tell us is, again, that there are a lot of things that are going on that are very exciting, and Human Rights Commission is a good place to be right now. I see lots of possibility, and let's do what we can to make sure that it pays off. This is the last thing on our agenda for today. Wow. And I hate to say it, but I think we can adjourn. Does somebody want to make a motion? No one? Come on.
I had just a comment before we adjourn,
Sure.
and that speaks to the phone message that I alluded to earlier. There was a second message left on the voicemail, so along the lines of the complaints, both for email and voicemail. There weren't any new in the email, but we have a recurring challenge with an individual who continues to contact the HRC, using both email and voicemail. And so the second message on the voicemail came from that individual. Many of you are familiar with the circumstances surrounding that person, but just to keep you informed and updated relative to both email and voicemail.
Right.
So those were the two relative to complaints.
Okay. So we're on top of all the complaints, correct? Good. Yes, what we've done, thank you, Corinne and Linda and Pam, for handling complaints. We don't talk about them because they're so personal, but we are handling them in the background and doing things too. Anything else that we ought to cover? Motion?
Sure, I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, thank you, everyone.